My name is Brent Leary, and I get a chance to spend a few good minutes with Melissa Garber. I want to make sure I get her title right. Senior User Experience Researcher for Consumer Reports, right? I get it right?
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me. This is great.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
So you didn't know we're going to be talking about sports and all that?
Absolutely not, no.
Okay. No, we're not going to be talking about sports. Maybe a little bit. We're going to just spend a few minutes getting to know you, getting to pick your brain a little bit about what you do and how you do it, and maybe how things are going to be changed by this two-letter word that everybody keeps talking about. It's not even a word, actually. It's just AI. But before we just get to that part, maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I am a researcher at Consumer Reports. I've been in the research and user experience space for a while. Hopped around from startups to I worked for Indeed for a while, and my background is actually in learning theory and cognitive science. So it's been like a really good combination for me to be in user research and to also have that background of learning theory and like how do people like interpret information.
You left out the best parts. Like you grew up a Philadelphia Phillies and Eagles sports fan and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, my family had season tickets growing up. I think it was more of like a push to be a fan. Like I'm not sure I had a choice.
Okay, well, that's okay. All right. So they gave me a script of some questions. They call it the Fast Five.
Sure.
I'm going to completely ignore that. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just going to use some. We'll mix in some of those and maybe some other things that come out. But I will stay to the script and ask you what your favorite word is.
Sure. Depends.
That's your favorite word?
That's
Depends?
my favorite word. Yep.
You want to expound on why that's your favorite word?
Why do you think?
It depends.
It depends. So I think that, especially being in research, everything has a context, right? And so you can't just have one right answer. Sometimes I joke that I'm asked to be a research vending machine, right? But it depends, right? Based off of like, who are we talking about? What experience? Where are they coming from? And also in my personal life, it depends. I have 2 small children, and the answer is not usually no or yes. It's let's figure it out. It depends. Yeah.
All right. I got to see the theme we got going here. Let's talk a little bit more about the experience of being a researcher. How did you actually get into research?
I think I kind of just fell into it. So I studied digital media design for learning, and I was tasked with like bringing this new learning management system to a company that I was working at. And my first thought was, I need to go talk to the people, the administrators who have to use this system throughout the company. I need to go talk to the actual end users. And I just started running research with folks, doing card sorting, getting their mental models, sitting down with people and doing ethnographic interviews. And I actually brought all of that to like a different sort of case study where I was like, hey, this is how I used user research to develop like a in-house vendor. Basically, it was like a third open source learning platform, and that we were able to sort of iterate on continuously. So being able to bring user insights from both the admins and the end users on like a regular cadence is really powerful.
So you said you've been doing this for a while, quite a while. I'm guessing that means before 2 years.
Yes.
Right? Okay, good. So I almost sort of look at the world and maybe the business world in like pre-ChatGPT and post-ChatGPT. So how has the way that you work and the way that you do things, how has that changed over the last 2 years since the growth of AI and Gen AI, and everybody is looking at how AI is disrupting everything, but how has it changed or impacted how you do your job?
I kind of want to reframe that. So I think research can impact how we build AI, right? I don't think it's not just a reactive thing that we're using in our day-to-day, which I do use it in the day-to-day, but I've also had the opportunity at Consumer Reports, we're working on a conversational AI agent that we built the orchestration ourselves in-house. So we're using a RAG framework to pull data from all of the data sources that we have from almost 90 years of research, right? And so with research, we're able to look at that and say, okay, well, this is what our users are actually looking for. And we can start sort of predicting, like, what are they looking for? What's their intent? And we use that to find out, okay, so what data are we going to start retrieving from all of these different sources? Like, what kinds of data need to come in? And that is the context that informs the prompt that we create to the LLM to get that answer back to our users. And then we're also able to use research to say, okay, our users want a different kind of like way of getting that information. Maybe they want like in a card format. Maybe they want it in like a specific kind of format. What kind of data? How is it the content design? What's the tone? What's the voice?
So was it that simple to actually jump into leveraging AI? Or what were some of the things, maybe were there any apprehensions? Were there any, wow, is this going to change things too much? Kind of take us through how you kind of evolved, is that the right term, to really put it to use and actually start seeing how not only could it impact you, but impact the way that your consumers or your customers would.
Yeah, so on the consumer side of it, we work with like trust and safety and security folks, like experts in the field, to make sure like data privacy is a huge thing at Consumer Reports, and protecting consumers' data. So that is handled by the experts on that side. And then on like my personal side, I use, we have an enterprise OpenAI account. So when I'm using ChatGPT, I'm not using a system that's actually reporting it back to the broader world, right? It's not training data sets outside of Consumer Reports. So just making sure that, really particular about like where you're putting your information.
You said you had 90 years worth of data?
Almost.
That's pretty, I mean, a lot of folks are so looking at what's current. How do you kind of mix that with all that's going on today to bring the kind of information or answers that customers are looking for?
Well, what's really cool is that in the past, you could look at the magazine, right? You could go to the website, you could try to find like the best refrigerator, but we have these testers at Consumer Reports that have been doing it for 30 plus years. They're experts in their field. They know so much about their area. And we realized like, okay, if you talk to like a tester in the fridge department and you were to say like, oh, I think there's like a whirring sound with my fridge. They were like, I know what that issue is, right? Like that's probably your dust condenser coil that you need to clean. And so being able to actually go around the company, and this is actually what our innovation lab team did, is they went around the company when they were creating this conversational agent and they talked to our subject matter experts. And they brought in all of that information, all of that expertise to help define like what the system was going to look like. And then additionally, we also had a original, like it's called AskCR, this agent, but we had something called AskCR 1.0 that was real humans answering real questions that people had. And we were able to take all of those transcripts and model those transcripts with the data science team in the innovation lab and figure out like what were people asking about, so we could start predicting the types of questions people might have. Nice.
Now you said some of your researchers have been around like doing this for 30 years?
Yeah, over 30 years.
Over
we
30
have
years.
Really great employee retention, I think.
Were there any kind of challenges with getting those folks to kind of buy into the way things are moving with AI and leveraging that to do things differently than they did in the past?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. I think that there's probably like a back and forth, right? Showing what AI could do and how it can help their work, as well as having their work inform the like AI and make sure that it like represents Consumer Reports and our expertise and our tone and our voice, and including folks throughout that process. So our product team did a really amazing job, our innovation lab, bringing in people throughout the development process and making sure that we were dog fooding our product. Yeah.
Has there been any real surprises or things that you didn't really think of as you started digging into AI that all of a sudden it's like, wow, I didn't know we could do that, or wow, I didn't know we should do this?
I think a big thing, and maybe it's not AI specific, it's just that like, this comes up in my research a lot, like people don't know what they don't know. So even if you have like a conversational chatbot, like you might not know what to ask it, right? Like it's really hard to have your search query. It's kind of why you go onto Google and a lot of times it's that bird's eye view search where you're just trying to get a sense of the landscape first and then refining that. So I think that a lot of times with like a conversational AI, right, we might say like, oh, a chatbot, that's a great like end goal, right? But for a user, that requires a lot of work, a lot of cognitive load to be able to have the ability to know what to ask. So I think that like working on like, how can we predict what people are actually going to ask and what they might be looking for? And how can we suggest prompts? And how can we help kind of guide them through this experience?
So we got this really nice audience of folks out here. but I'm the only one with the mic. What I'm going to do, I'm going off script here.
Oh boy.
Anybody have a question? And if you tell it to me, I'll repeat it in the mic so we can all hear it. So does anybody have a question for Melissa? I mean, I've got several, but we've got such a great audience here. They all look like they're really interested. So anybody have a question? Going once, going twice? All right, what's your name? Irene. Irene has a question. Irene, what's your question? Okay, so she wants you to kind of help her build out her research function. What did you do to build your research function out?
Okay, awesome. I can sort of address that from like the democratization standpoint and a little bit of the buy-in. So a lot of times I look at it as like just taking it in like very small steps and like proving value. So when I originally brought user research to this like training function, there was a lot of pushback. They're like, it's going to take a lot of time. Just like a lot of times product managers say, like, it's going to take a lot of time. Can we do that? So what I did was I basically was like, well, let me just prove this out. Let me just do it. And maybe like do it and ask forgiveness rather than permission. And then with democratization, we're actually doing that at Consumer Reports right now, where we're helping support our design teams to be able to run their own evaluative research. And it's really getting specific about the types of research that it makes sense for design to do versus the types of research that it might make more sense to have like an expert in the field doing. Sure, so I think for designers, it's evaluative, right? Like iterative development, being able to put out a design in front of users and then go back and redesign, right? It's like a faster form of development there versus the more generative work that a lot of times in the discovery work that we do in research. And then for PMs, I always like to say it's more of that, like the summative work, right? The evaluation at the end of like being able to pull those benchmarks. They're already looking at like a lot of that that data on the site, that behavioral data. So being able to like run analysis on that. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about how the actual relationships of people are changing as you start to integrate a lot of this modern technology, AI, machine learning, LLMs. Like how has the actual physical relationships between the people, like researchers and customers and everybody else that's kind of working together, how have those changed?
Honestly, I would say right now, not a lot has changed.
Okay.
I think we're all just still people working in companies, doing our jobs and looking at our KPIs. And now we just have some tools that make things maybe a little easier or better or faster or worse sometimes.
How do you measure, you have your traditional KPIs. Are there any other new ways to measure for success or figure out if we're on the right track or we're not on the right track? Or have some KPIs been even more emphasized while others de-emphasized?
I think after this conference, I think I have a lot to go back to Consumer Reports with around like how we can start bringing the customer experience more into how we're measuring our success.
Okay.
So I think that might be more on the roadmap. We have a really we're a transforming organization right now. Last year we got a new chief experience officer and we're really focused on improving the customer experience. So I think that as we evolve, we're probably going to be able to talk a little bit more about that. But right now we're still in the sort of transformation.
Like what have you heard at this event so far that has got you thinking, hey, maybe there are some things that we can discuss and talk about?
So for me, I really loved the CMO's talk yesterday morning, and specifically there was like an illustration of like this really beautiful journey map, and I was like, that looks familiar. Like we're always thinking about the journey. In all of my research, I'm always asking, where have you been and where are you going? And I always encourage the designers I work with to also think about the full experience. And then he showed the journey map and I was like, okay, this looks familiar. And then the second journey map he showed, which was just like a chaos map of lines everywhere. And with the little moments that matter popping up, like bolded. And I felt like that was so powerful that I intend on bringing that back to Consumer Reports.
Did that kind of look familiar, at least in your mind, or?
Very much so. In a way that I hadn't realized that I could illustrate that. I always felt like I would have to present a journey map that was like this, like a journey of a person doing a thing. But for me, I'm like, that's never real. When you're actually talking to consumers and analyzing that data, you can see that some things are just random.
You know what?
Yeah.
It depends.
Exactly.
Talk a little bit about like your group, your structure, how many people you actually work with in your team. Let us know a little bit about that.
Okay, sure. So on my team, I actually report into consumer insights. So my direct manager and one of my coworkers are really working on the market research side of things. They're doing the brand tracker and MPS and our CSAT. And then it's myself and one other user researcher. And we work with not only our we call them our core product squads who are working on our digital experience, but we also have an innovation lab that we work with. We also work with our editorial team. We also work with our advocacy team. We just have been supporting a new ideas incubator within the company. So we kind of are able to get our hands in a lot of different pots. Even though the company's not huge, we're doing so many amazing things as a nonprofit that we're able to we're not just focused on product. We actually have a broader reach.
I love the fact that there's still a magazine, like a
Yes.
print magazine. How do you get the insights, in all these different formats, but also remain true to kind of the traditional aspects of consumer reports?
I think our magazine is a pretty wonderful case of print that's still doing quite well. And my coworker who works on the sort of market research side of things is the one that keeps track of our satisfaction with our magazine. Yeah.
Nice. All right, let me go back to the script.
Sure.
What profession other than your own would you like to try?
I had seen this question and I really wanted to give a very motivated answer, but I would love to be retired.
That's a great, I see you took a lot of thought into that one too.
I had thought about saying something that sounded more driven, and I was just if I was retired, I could go back to school, I could take courses and things that interest me, I could garden more and get new hobbies, right? So
You really thought this one out, apparently. Very good. All right, any other questions? All right, I'm gonna go back then. All right. So talk a little bit more about, the plans going forward with AI, because every conference you go to, you can't escape it. I've noticed, I go to a lot of events through the year. At the beginning of the year, the AI discussion is one thing. End of the year is completely different. Talk a little bit about maybe what you see the future of how you guys leverage AI and what you do, and how that might kind of impact the overall company itself.
yeah, I think that the way that we're leveraging AI is to help make our consumers smarter, be the superheroes of their own lives, right? Being able to get this information that they're looking for and to be able to make better decisions. I think something about AI, and maybe this is on a personal level that I look at, is that what is the use case, right? There's a lot of AI solutions, and I was talking about chatbots. How do you even know what to ask a chatbot? And I think it's really important to have a critical eye on, just because it has AI on it, is it doing something that's important? And knowing that the tokens that it takes to use generative AI, right? And the water that it's using. I think that those are all things to think about too. Is it AI that we need to use for this solution, or are there other ways? Could we use machine learning? Are there other ways that we could be getting this information or be delivering results? So even at Consumer Reports, we're thinking about that, about ways to reduce the energy we're using, ways that we can make our calls to the LLM when it makes sense, and make our calls to our data when it makes sense.
Interesting. You hear a lot of people, a lot of apprehension around, is AI going to take my job, or is it going to be the one in charge? You're hearing now about, they call it agentic AI with lots of autonomy, the bot can actually think and do things for itself. What's the apprehension level in research with AI at this point?
Oh, I'm not sure. I know that AI doesn't reason, right? There has been research that has just come out that said AI doesn't reason. It can pull sentiment, but it doesn't understand emotion.
It's not sentient yet?
It is not sentient. It cannot pull insights for you. It can pull patterns. And it's wonderful at pulling patterns, right? And it's wonderful at looking across data sources and pulling patterns, but it can't rationalize for you. So I think that while it can augment your work and it can make you smarter and make you do better, We're not quite there yet. I can't remember what it's called, where it's able to come in and actually has like a mind of its own, but we're not quite there yet. So, and it still hallucinates. Even when you're using your own data, it still hallucinates. So we have something at CR that we call human in the loop.
Yes.
Where we have folks that are still looking at what the AI is creating and making sure that it is not just spouting out nonsense to people, or that we are like maintaining our brand integrity and the trust that we've built over almost 90 years. Yeah.
That's a really comforting thought that there are actually still humans there.
Absolutely.
For those hallucinations, because they ain't going away. What question should I ask a researcher in 2024 going into 2025?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Don't give me the "it depends" either. I don't want to.
I feel like researchers are so used to asking the questions.
Yeah,
it
right.
can be really difficult to be like, what questions you would ask of me? I would say what's most interesting about research is that we get to learn about people. So what is most surprising about what you're learning about the people that you're working with and for? Like what is like what's surprising or shocking or weird? What are you like, what's the last decision you made based off of something that you learned?
Yeah. What have you learned about people in the last couple of years that, because of all that's going on, that you weren't able to learn about them before?
Oh, that's interesting. I'm not sure that what I've learned is based off of like what I couldn't learn before, right? I mean, people are using technology in different ways, but we're still human and we still have our goals and our needs, and they're solution agnostic, right? So we're not like tied to like whatever delivery system we have right now. I remember chatbots were popular in 2017 and it's 2024 and they're popular again. So it's all very like, people are still human. People's goals are very much tied to like what their needs are and who they are as humans, and not necessarily who they are in relation to a product or a solution.
Cool. One last question, and then I'll ask you my sports question.
Oh no.
Although I might have already asked you that. I don't know. So when you go home from this conference and you get a chance to think about and do stuff, what are you going to take away from this conference and try to do when you get back to where you work?
Yeah, so I think I spoke to this a little bit, but I have been sort of tasked with my coworker to start looking into the journeys of our consumers on Consumer Reports, as well as like the new audiences that we're hoping to attract. And I think a big thing for me, the takeaway is that the way that we present that information, or the way that we sort of start aggregating that information, doesn't need to be perfect. That's always been a blocker for me. You know, like I've been like, oh, but how can it possibly fit into this map, right? And now I feel like a little bit more freed to be able to just kind of pull out, like visually represent what is important and where we can impact things.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Oh, good. All right.
Very tactical.
All right.
Yeah.
I like you. All right. Melissa, thank you so much for doing this. This has been great. Thank you.